All right, guys, welcome to the show today. Today, we're going to be talking about how to improve your accounting. We have with us Miss Ann Gannon. She is the principal at the Largo Group. The Largo Group offers innovative accounting and bookkeeping solution to businesses and individuals alike. Miss Ann, welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So, everybody wants to know the real question: is accounting fun?
That's a dumb question. I think there's enjoyment in getting to learn different businesses. So while the numbers are not fun, I find it fascinating to get to walk into a business that's your client and you know all like the ins and outs. Like we have a lot of restaurants and breweries and everything. It's just really cool to see what as a business owner you're able to create. So that part's fun. The accounting part, yeah, a little bit.
Yes, I pursued a finance degree in college for undergrad, and we had to take accounting courses, and I was not too pleased with those accounting courses. And then to top it off, I took international taxation in
Oh no.
undergrad, and I didn't like that either.
No,
So
that's not fun.
so okay, accounting wasn't fun, but it's needed for all businesses. I always tell people, especially as an entrepreneur, make sure you get a good accounting. Don't try to do it on your own. Focus on operations. Focus on the business at hand, the marketing, the aspect of that. But always try to, for the most part, if you can, in the beginning, outsource your accounting for those that understand the interactions of accounting that can save you the most money, can get you the best bang for your buck, especially if you can afford it, if you will. But some businesses feel like it's late. Do you ever feel like it's too late for a business?
No, I don't think so at all. I think, the biggest lesson of COVID is that things change overnight, right? So I think as everybody comes out of COVID, I think that same rule applies in that things can change overnight. So if we don't like how last month was, that's okay, right? We can always right the ship. I think, a lot of times people feel like accounting, like you said, is really hard and it's just, it's something I'll never understand. And I think part of that is the way that accounting is taught in college. I mean, I used to teach accounting part time when my kids were really little, and it's terrible. I hated the textbook, and I'm like, I'm an accountant, and I think this thing is terrible. So I can only imagine what it's like for my students. And I think for whatever reason, that's the way accounting is, right? It's sort of like lawyers, right? We try to make it really hard and then you have this bill and you think that you can't do it on your own. But the thing is, in business, you have to understand how your business works, right? You have to understand the fundamentals, you have to understand your margin, you have to know what your business should make every month in order to be successful. And I think as an owner, some of that comes down to the basics, right? If I'm a brewery and I want to be a microbrewery, what's my margin on beer? It seems like a really simple question, but one that we go, oh, I don't want to look, or I don't know. But if we don't know that answer, what are we doing, right? So I think sometimes as an owner, we think it's something that we, just don't do or we don't have to look at. But in reality, just these fundamental questions of, what should my business make at the end of the month, or how much cash should I have left? Those are the key starting points to really building a plan for our business.
That's very true. It's very it's almost it's essential to understand how your business runs, especially I interviewed someone a while ago and they told me the best thing about being a business owner is you always have to know the numbers, how much you made this month, how much you made last month, how much it costs, cost of goods, so on and so forth. If you don't know that, then you're not running a really good business. You as a business owner have to know this because you got to be on top of it. But you definitely got to have people that know what they're doing. But how can you get a business owner to understand their accounting?
So I think what it is really first kind of looking at the way that you operate, right, as a person. There's some people, in our work, we have clients that, are chef backgrounds, and we joke because they're so detail oriented. I mean, they will go look for like a $10 Staples bill all day long, right? And then you have others that are like, that's just not them. And that's okay, right? So you have to find the way of looking at accounting that works for you. So if you're a big picture person, maybe it's as simple as starting with tracking your cash balance. I mean, we literally have a work paper where it's okay, for the next 30 days, you're going to write down your bank account balance every day. And then at the end of the 30 days, we're going to see, is it more or less, right? Now, for your chefs in the room, that freaks them out because they're like, no, 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 I need to see, the $10 Staples bill. But for your entrepreneurs, that's enough. That gives them the peace of mind of knowing, okay, it went up by $5,000. Let's do it next month, and let's see if it goes up another 5,000. And it's really just getting to that basic level of, okay, I know where I am, I know what my business is doing, but there's lots of ways to get there. And so I would really start with your own personality and how you operate in life.
So you know what the thing about it is, that when people start in the business, the first thing they ask, you know, me if they want to get advice, like how should I set up my business? Should it be a LLC? Should it be a C corp? Or it should be a S corp, which is a sub chapter of a C corp. All these great things that people always ask me, and the first thing I ask them, talk to your CPA. Because this is gonna be a major accounting for your operations. Every structure changes differently. LLCs are not really seen as the corporation type, where they all seen as partnerships if you got more than one manager. So you really need to talk to a CPA. And so I always tell people that. And so how do you think what would be the first tip I guess you would give somebody on how should they set up their structure for their business?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think you're right that a lot of times there's tax implications that people don't really even think about. I think it really comes down to how they see themselves getting paid out of the business. So if you see yourself wanting to take be on payroll, for example, then, I would say an S corp is a great option because you have, it's separated, but you can put yourself on payroll, but you can also take a distribution. And then I think it also comes down to how you interact with your other partners. So if there are more than one people involved, like really making sure at the beginning that from both, a finance perspective and a tax perspective, that everybody understands, like, okay, I put in 50,000, the other person put in 100,000. Are these loans? Is this just equity in the business? Am I going to get a salary even though I put money in, or am I going to get my money back first? I mean, these seems like really simple questions, but so many times, we're so worried to get the doors open that we forget to look at the structure of the business until you're 6 months down the road, a year down the road. Oh, I put myself on payroll, but I'm a partnership and I'm not supposed to be on payroll. Like, that happens all the time. They don't even know, right? So it's just these little 5-minute chunks of time can save you hours later on, of just not being afraid to look at it, but just learning with a curious mind of understanding the rules, and then just making sure that it works for you and the other owners.
That is really true. And then there are the aspects of financing when it comes to a business. What are the common business financing options for small businesses out there?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of financing options right now. I think the government has done a great job of helping get people back on their feet from COVID. But I think in any startup, I think it's really important to understand not just the financing in terms of the money you're going to get and the interest rate, but really how is it structured for liability? I mean, is it something that the owner is guaranteeing, or is it something that the business is guaranteeing? Because I know, especially during COVID, there were so many people, like your talking heads out there when COVID happened, telling people like, oh, just close. It's not worth, it's not worth staying open. And really you look back and you go, well, it is if the owner has a personal guarantee on the lease, or if, you have a personal guarantee on all of your debt, because at least you have some revenue coming in. So I really think understanding at the beginning before you sign the bottom line, worst case scenario, COVID comes again and I can't operate. Am I on the hook for 2 years of this lease, 3 years of this lease? Like what really have I put at risk in my own personal? Because that'll really help you understand, moving forward, how you should get compensated for that risk too.
That's so true. That is really true. So, what are the most common ones for financing options? Now, currently, right now, I believe that most of the triple P is out, right? I think they have exhausted that. So, what would be the alternative for businesses to go to now?
Yeah, so the SBA has a really good loan program called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. It actually is a 30-year term. And I think the interest rate is 3.75, which is unheard of for a small business. So that is huge. And I think a lot of people have really found this as a really good way to have a nest egg. Even if you don't spend it right away, you can just keep it in your bank. It's almost like your own line of credit. The other thing, if you find yourself really, not at a great cash position yet, is the employee retention tax credit, which is actually a refund that your business is eligible for based on your payroll. So if you, prior to the end of last year, the December 28th, you couldn't do PPP and the employee retention tax credit. But then in the funding that went through on December 28th, they changed the wording to say that you could. So it's this kind of hidden thing right now that people don't realize, but basically that one word change of being able to do both programs made every business eligible for up to $5,000 per employee in 2020 and up to $7,000 per employee per quarter in 2021. So there's some huge dollars on the table. Now the criteria is you're either a decline in sales or you were restricted in 2020. So a lot of the clients that we have, even restaurants that were able to operate, they couldn't operate their bar, they couldn't operate their catering. So that made them eligible for this tax credit. So it really didn't even matter for their sales because they had been restricted. So we've seen some great dollars. And the great thing about that is it's a refund. So it's just like getting a refund on your tax return, that it's not something you're going to have to pay back. And it's not something, that is something that's earmarked, that it truly is, dollars in your hand. So I would definitely tell people to look into the employee retention tax credit if they are looking for additional funding. But then, beyond that, I think the banks have also come a long way in helping small business. So I think even if it's something that you have never explored before, now is probably a good time to go to your banker and just see, because I think COVID also has made people looking for new clients in all areas. And it seems like the banks are too.
That's so true. Every business want to know that one magical question: what can I do to increase profits? What are some of the advice, common advice, without knowing the aspect of that particular business that you normally give business owners?
So, it sounds incredibly simple, but I would say track your bank balance for the next 30 days. Because I think doing that makes you feel in control over your cash. So I think so many times there's so many ins and outs in business, in small business, right? You have payroll and you have vendors and you have money coming in and you have, fees are taken out of the deposits by your merchant services. And it's really hard to know how you're doing, right? And it can get very overwhelming, and then we just don't look at it, or it takes 15 days to get a P&L for last month, and it just can feel very out of control. And I think by checking your bank balance every day for the next 30 days, so start with June 1st and record what your balance was the whole month of June, you'll at least know, okay, my business made $4,000. But then when I get to July, I am now more aware of what I have expect, for that month. So when I'm writing checks or I'm, deciding to make purchases, all of a sudden you have a target, right? And I think so much of our, misunderstanding or just, fear related to our finances is just not having a clear target to what we think we should earn in our business.
That is so true. Wow, that's actually probably one of the best, like literally insights I've heard on literally how to track, how much your business is doing on a monthly basis. I mean, bank statements make a world of difference because that's money in and out. So that lets what your cash flow is for that particular business. So how do you report profit? How would you report it?
Well, you still would then, as a starting point, right? Because let's say it says $4,000, then I would want to go into my P&L and see, were my sales better than the month before? All of those margins are still incredibly important. I think what we would want to do from there is build a budget, because, it really is important to know, okay, based on my current sales, right? A really good benchmark to keep in mind. If you don't look at anything else on your P&L, but your revenue, and most people do from some sort of point of sale system, whether you're retail or some sort of, payment processing system, your sales, at a minimum, your business should earn 10%, right? So if my sales are 50,000, then I should have 5,000 on my bottom line. But what happens is, as an owner, I think I should get paid 7. right? So now all of a sudden I'm like, my cash is going down, but is it going down, or is it that I'm paying myself 7 and I'm earning 5? So that's where we kind of have to figure things out, right? Because if I need 7 in order to make it work for me, then I need to figure out, how do I get $2,000 more out of my business, whether it's labor or labor allocation. I mean, we finally started this with one of my clients, which is great. And they're finally starting to see, okay, you know what, we'll work more hours. It's husband and wife team. We'll work more hours because we want more in our own pockets at the end of the month. So we're going to take on more shifts. What's great about that is you lose the resentment, right? You lose the, oh my God, I have to work all the time and I don't earn any money, because now they see, you know what, I'm saving $1,000 a week by me picking up the weekend shift than hiring somebody else. Now, on the flip side, if I value time more, you know what, it's worth $1,000 out of my pocket to not have to be here on a Saturday. So just understanding the way the money works in your business can help you feel in control, right? Because if I don't want to be here Saturday, it's going to cost me $1,000, and that's okay. But if I want $1,000, I'm going to have to be here Saturday, right? And we can't have it both ways.
Yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too, but why have
Right.
cake? I don't know. I never get that one. But so, for business owners that's out there that's looking, for advice, let them know how they can find you to learn more about you.
So check out our website. We do actually, we just launched a book called Never Again, The Guide to Building a Resilient Business in the Wake of COVID-19. And there's some great resources there. So it's not, 200 pages. It's very short, to the point, written for business owners, but some really good fundamentals, because I do believe now is the time to get our financial house in order, right? A lot of business owners have more cash than they had pre-COVID, thanks to the government programs. What we don't want to do is get in those old habits, right? Like, now is the time to understand our business, make sure it's resilient, make sure it's cash flow positive. So we're in a great position going into next year.
Awesome. Thank you, Ann, for joining us, the Largo Group.
Thank you so much.
All right.